Howdy, this is Mackenzie Franklin from SideGame LLC here in Colorado Springs, Colorado. Today we're taking a look at my top 10 favorite campaign board games. These are games that have interlinking sessions where you'll see some sort of development as you play game after game. I really enjoy this style of game as you really get to get comfortable with the character and explore a fascinating, unique world. With that being said, if you haven't subscribed to the channel already, please make sure that you do. It is the best way to help us grow. And for those of you already subscribed, thank you so much for the continuous support. Let's talk about my top 10 favorite campaign board games. My number 10 is going to Vagrantsong, a heavy hitter from 2022. This is having you play as vagrants aboard a train trying to restore the humanity of a variety of these terrible haints. These are these ghostly spirits that are going to inhabit the train cars, and you'll need to use your abilities to hopefully restore them to their humane selves. With that being said, one of my favorite parts about this game is the bindle. The bindle is full of these tokens that you can dive into and collect a variety of different abilities and items from. But the enemies will also use this bindle in order to activate their own effects. One of my favorite things about this is that the scenarios can add whatever they want to the effects of these different tokens, so you're never actually changing the components, but they can mean so many different things. You can also put these event tokens into the bindle, and those can come out at various different points in time, and I think there's a lot of creativity with the way that the cycling of the bindle works. Once you get a certain amount of them out of the bag, it will recycle, but you can also see some really cool interactions with the abilities of the characters as they are able to manipulate and hopefully control it. I think that the bindle system does a great job at making sure that the game is going on at a very steady pace, as you always have that pressure of what the enemy could do, and so you have multiple ways to plan for it. And this also really supports another thing I love about Vagrantsong, the ability cards. The abilities aren't necessarily just picking the thing that's the strongest, but picking things that seem interesting or useful, and there's a lot of abilities that interact with the bindle, and I find them to be some of the most fun. So Vagrantsong has a lot of varied scenario play, and I think that the entire game system is one that you are going to love, with great writing and a great spooky theme. That is my number 10 Vagrantsong. My number 9 is going to the game Detective, a modern crime board game. This has you playing as Antari's agents. You're all part of this police force, and it's your job to be a detective. You even have the internet at your disposal, as you're going to use a laptop and a Antari's database in order to log information, look stuff up, and use real-world clues and information to help you solve these cases. This definitely feels like the most work in a game, honestly. You feel like you're an actual detective, looking up stuff, making sure you're going down the right leads, and one of my favorite parts about this game is the way that you travel from place to place. You only have so many working hours in a day, and so you have to really manage what you're going to do during that day. Are you going to take time to drive out into the suburbs and then spend time there trying to follow your leads, or are you going to travel around town all day and waste a lot of time doing so? It's up to you how you want to manage that time, but also which leads you want to follow. There's no set path, and you do not have enough time in order to explore everything. I love these choices present in this game. I'm not going to go into any more details here. This is one you need to check out, particularly if you like this detective genre of games. Amazing gameplay with lots of different campaigns you can play, and there's even one that's set in the older California setting, and I think that's one that you should definitely check out. So a lot of fun. This is Detective, a modern crime board game, my number 9. My number 8 is going to Assassin's Creed, the Brotherhood of Venice. Finished one of the campaigns for this summer, and I'm so happy I did. This just continues to impress. This is my favorite stealth board game. Assassin's Creed Brotherhood of Venice has you playing as an assassin. You'll be leader of an entire clan of assassins as you'll go out and perform mission after mission. During these missions, you'll have some objective you need to complete, and then enemies that you'll need to evade to do so. You'll spend these action cubes that are on your board in order to take a variety of actions. And that's my favorite part, actually, is how streamlined the entire system is. You've got 3 actions on your turn. Pretty much everything takes 1 cube, maybe more, very rarely, so you can do basically 3 things. You do those 3 things, and then the enemies are going to activate. They're going to move around this board, and then you'll draw an event card and repeat this process. You're going to have a lot of ways in order to make things cheaper, which you'll learn as you play the game. It has an amazing tutorial system that'll guide you through how to approach the different challenges and difficulties when it comes to the stealth system, as well as knowing when to switch from stealth mode to combat mode. And then there's a lot of different planning and preparation based on the way that the enemies are going to be moving and patrolling the area. My favorite thing about this game, though, is the item system. I love the fact that every item in this game has a use and you want to be using them. You're going to need to if you want to be successful, and particularly the one-time use items. This very much goes into that theme of use it or lose it. If you need to be using your items, otherwise you are going to end up with all of these items that just sit there and don't do anything, and the challenges are going to be much more difficult if that's the case. And your health actually carries over from mission to mission, so you want to make sure that you are doing things as efficiently as possible, and that is going to have you spending these really interesting items taking very fun actions. This game is thematic, fun, super streamlined, and I love the stealth system as a whole. This is a winner, and there's now a retail version that uses standees instead of the large Kickstarter miniatures version, so it is accessible. You can get a copy of this from Triton Noir. So go take a look at this. This is Assassin's Creed Brotherhood of Venice, a wonderful game, and the expansions are super cool, taking you to different time periods and even more new adventures. So that is my number 8, Assassin's Creed Brotherhood of Venice. My number 7 goes to Hostage Negotiator Career. This is a culmination of the entire Hostage Negotiator system. This has you playing a hand management game where you'll have these action cards, you'll play them out onto the board in order to try to rescue as many hostages as possible from a terrible abductor. And the career version essentially takes all of the content for Hostage Negotiator and puts it into a single package. And this package is going to have you starting off with more of the easy abductors and then going to more difficult ones as time goes on. I really love the way that the career year system works. As you're starting off with a career event card, something will happen, and then you'll have a stressor, which could be things that are going on in your life. Maybe you had to go to court, you're fighting with your spouse, and then you'll have another personal event after your abduction happens, after you save people, to see how that's affected your own personal life. It adds some really great flavor to the game, and it takes these short experiences that the original Hostage Negotiator provides with that interesting card system and adds an amazing narrative to it, and the way that it incorporates all the different expansions is very smart and very clever. And another thing that I really love about this one in particular is the way that you are going to be upgrading your cards. There are some of these things that you can earn that will actually upgrade your different abilities as a character, whether that be in the form of special packages with things inside. I won't get any spoilers here, but you also can get these cards that are negotiators, and these negotiators come in with experience, and you can use them when you go and take on abductors for a special ability. So it's a great way of integrating all these different promos as well as these negotiator cards you may not have wanted to use because maybe you weren't comfortable with using them. It might have felt like cheating, but I think in this campaign sense, it fits very well. The gameplay is extremely solid, and this is actually my preference over Final Girl or Hostage Negotiator. I will play Hostage Negotiator Career anytime. I think that this one is the one you should be playing. Amazing hand management system with multi-use cards. I think that the gameplay is tense, but also thematic, and I think that the luck swings make for this campaign experience that you're going to want to go back into time and time again. This is excellent game with lots of planning and thoughtfulness, with mitigation towards the different potential outcomes. Wonderful experience. This is Hostage Negotiator Career, my number 7. My number 6 is going to Kingdom Death Monster, a game played in darkness. You are controlling the settlement of people as you take them on lantern year after lantern year to fight against this terrible darkness. You follow this gameplay loop of hunting, showdown, and then settlement, where you're going to be hunting for a creature, and once you find that creature, you have a showdown with it, and you take it out, and you skin it alive, and you bring back all its body parts, and you use that in your settlement in order to create new gear, new things for your settlement, and hopefully cultivate a thriving community. Now, Kingdom Death Monster offers a lot to love. It has my favorite AI system in any game. I love the way that the cards are not only flavorful, but they're so sensical in the way that they work. They're very thematic with the different expansions and the different monsters that you can fight, and I love the AI hit system. Whenever you attack something, you don't just deal damage to it, you see where you actually hit. If you punch something, you're going to punch it maybe in its arm, or maybe in its head, or maybe in its mouth, and it bites down and it chops down your arm. I love this so much. But another thing that I really love is the gear system. Every time that you bring back those remains of a creature that you've hunted, you can actually turn it into these different items. You can create these armor sets, which will allow you to go down different paths each time you play. One of the more simple one here is the rawhide set, but maybe you're deciding to incorporate the Spidicules expansion and you want to make an entire set out of silk. That becomes a quest on its own. You also have a variety of different weapons that you can use, whether it be daggers or shields, and I love being being able to explore these different types of weapons and specializing in them, because the more you use a weapon on a specific character, the more proficient they become with it, and they can get even more special abilities and bonuses. It can even get to the point where you get a master in this skill, and now they've passed on their proficiencies to everybody in the settlement. I really enjoy the entire system here, and it's got this great interlocking combo system where certain items and certain layouts will benefit the survivors more than others. I love this exploration of these concepts and seeing which playstyles you like based on the weapons and loadouts that you prefer. So that is my number 6, Kingdom Death Monster. My number 5 goes to Oathsworn Into the Deepwood, and this actually is beating out Kingdom Death Monster for me right now based on interest level and based on the combat system. So whereas I really enjoy the AI system in Kingdom Death Monster, Oathsworn Into the Deepwood's combat system for the character combat is so gratifying. It's one of the big standout features in here. It's a big boss battling game where you have every time you resolve a skill test, whether it be attacking something or checking for a skill in the story mode of the game, you're going to roll as many dice as you want, or flip as many cards as you want. And if you get 2 blanks, you automatically fail. I really love this system because you can mix and match how you approach these tests, and it's up to you how much you're willing to push your luck on this. As soon as you see that you only have a single blank or no blanks, you know that you are going to have an amazing hit or amazing resolution, and it feels so gratifying when that happens. Every single action you take is a puzzle based on that success system. And you can also gamify it where you don't have to roll the dice. You can look at the discard piles of these stacks that you've used. You can pick and choose which of these sets of dice you're going to be rolling, and you can even upgrade your dice into colors with more success points on them, but the same number of missing sides. So lots of great things happening here, and it has this 2-side story system where you have a story that's going to affect the encounter, and then the encounter is a unique boss fight where you'll have your 4 characters and you'll try your best to defeat it. It also has something very similar to something like Assassin's Creed, where you are going to be using your items a lot, and they are going to degrade over time, so you want to make sure you're using them because you will eventually get more to replace them, which I really love. And one thing that I really want to stress here is that the character design in Oathsworn is also incredible. You can decide to use one of these large character models that are going to have their own sets of cards, or you can have these little tiny companion cards, which are much more easy to run but very powerful to compensate for this, and I think that this is a lovely design choice. But if you do play with one of these large characters, they're going to be very thematic and interesting. One of the characters I'm playing with right now, the Huntress, has these falcon tokens that are going to go onto her board, and you can actually send them on to these other characters, and they feel like falcons. You send them out and they hold on to the character that they're onto, and they start pecking, or you can have them take one of your friends and glide them across the map. This is so thematic and so cool, and this is the most unique take I've seen on something like this, as opposed to a character that just summons a creature and then it moves around and hits things with you. So not necessarily a summon, but tokens that you're able to manipulate and move around. I love this. So there's so much to love in Oathsworn Into the Deepwood, my number 5. My number 4 goes to Arkham Horror, the card game. This is a large mythos, Arkham mythos, Cthulhu mythos game where you're going to be constructing a deck of cards for your investigator and seeing that deck progress from mission to mission. You'll pick a campaign setting, take out the campaign log, and then populate this mythos chaos bag and then set up a scenario. The scenario is populated from a variety of different encounter sets, and they're going to have these map tiles, they're going to have specific encounter cards that go into a deck, and then every turn you're going to be drawing from this combined deck of terrible things, essentially. So it's a race against time as you're trying to complete the scenario's objectives before the scenario pushes its doom threshold and advances itself. So I really love the tension in this game as you are building your deck with this thought in mind of trying to be as efficient as possible while also retaining some very interesting thematic tools that pair well with your character or against the mission that you're playing as. And that's definitely the highlight of this game as a whole. I think the scenario design is amazing and how challenging it is, but also how creative, and also the card design itself is wonderful. One of my favorite things about this game is that there are a variety of different cards that function with all the different aspects of the game, one of those being the skill cards. The skill cards here every single card has these icons on the left here, and every time you do something in the game, generally you're going to have to do a skill test. So if you punch something, you're going to have to calculate your punches, your fists, and so you can discard these skill cards or any card in your hand to add symbols to that test, and then you'll draw into this chaos bag and hopefully resolve it successfully, or something terrible might happen. There are some skill cards here that you can only use them for a skill test, and so I love that feature. You commit something, you get an additional bonus when you do so, and then usually they'll do a special ability or they'll replace themselves, like Perception here. I love the flexibility of all your cards, but I do love that there is some specialization when it comes to those effects as well. And there are even some characters that work extremely well with these skill cards on top of all that. I love the event cards having some things that are very specific or some things that are more generalized, like this barricade here you put on a location, and now the weaker enemies cannot come into here. I think that's so much fun, having this thematic event, and then eventually when you leave, there's no one to hold that barricade, so everything can come in. The cards are able to be thematic, interesting, but also powerful and applicable to the game's state. So I really love the scenario design in here, and if I were to recommend that you start on one of these campaigns, I'd recommend that you start with the Dream Eaters campaign. I think that one is really interesting because you can play it as a 4-part campaign and have a very short campaign, but still get that entire flavor of Arkham, or you can play it as a large 8-part interconnected campaign. I actually just wrapped up a game of this recently, and incredible game. I love Arkham Horror, the card game. That is my number 4. My number 3 is going to Etherfields, and all of the expansions for this finally dropped, and I can wholeheartedly recommend them now because it is just more amazing concepts, but with a great framework and core system behind it all. So the gameplay does not disappoint. So Etherfields is a deck building game where you're going to be taking your dreamers, your characters, and moving around this map, interacting with the different points on the board, and trying to solve a puzzle of some sort. You'll generally have this dream gate tile that has an ominous goal, and you must discover the answer to that goal through the dream. And I love the way that the system works. You'll have a hand of cards, and each card will have the system here, these symbols here, and each of the symbols responds to different things. You have green, which is for contacting or talking to people on the board. You have red, which is generally for aggression or physical things that you'll be doing. And then you have the yellow, which is movement or moving around, a lot of things to do with agility. And you'll be playing these cards in different combinations and trying to maximize your efficiency as you interact with the board. You'll have almost every card has a special ability as well, and so you can always use them for the symbols or that special ability. So having every single card in your deck be multi-use just increases those decision points even more. But the best thing about this game, bar none, is the scenario design itself. I'm not going to get into any spoilers here, but every single scenario has a theme to it, a dreamscape that you're going to be exploring, and it's up to you to decide what the interpretation of this is going to be. You're going to collect these different figments and these different pieces from dreams, and you'll have carryover from dream to your next one. You'll get to see some characters potentially show up later in what are known as slumbers, and you'll be able to interact with them. And the entire new edition of Etherfields actually did an entire update to the entire system, the rulebook, the map tiles, some of the specific cards, and even removing parts of the game that others were having troubles with. And I think this is amazing. The fact that Awakened Realms has responded to potential criticism for the game is wonderful. I really enjoyed the game before I played the new expansion stuff, but the expansion stuff and the new changes just make so much sense. The way that they have adjusted the map tile makes it so that the amount of these slumbers are reduced. There are these mini encounters that you'll be playing against from round to round, and you'll also be able to look at the map and get a better idea of what sort of path you want to go. In the original, there was a lot of these different icons that you wanted to avoid, hopefully, but in this one, you have more icons that you want to reach, and I think it's a more gratifying feeling. I do also want to recommend that if you do play the Etherfields game, that you play as either, if you're playing with 2 or less, that you play with either the Gambler or the Free Spirit. Those are the yellow and the blue characters. Now, the reason that I say this in particular is because of the icons on those characters. The Reaper and the Strongman, I believe, they really only have a lot of one specific color, and the Thor Knight as well. but they also have abilities that can support them generally everything, because you want to be able to do a little bit of everything. The Free Spirit has this ability where you can turn your banished cards into these additional currency of whatever you want, and then the Gambler allows you to roll the dice a little bit more frequently because you can always boost your actions by rolling dice, and that's something you want to be doing to always get extra value and points. So those are my recommendations. If you are playing this game with 2 or less, you should probably be playing with a Gambler or a Free Spirit, because I do think that it's going to make your experience a little bit better. And there's a lot of games in the Awakened Realms house that's kind of like this. So Tainted Grail also has this issue where you can pick a character that's just woefully underprepared or just does not work in that low player setting. So it's something I definitely want to make sure that you're aware of before playing Etherfields. But this game is amazing. I love the continuity of the entire thing, the way that the game opens up. You'll have this dream map that evolves. You'll be unlocking more and more dreams. You'll be able to revisit dreams and see how things change. And then your deck is constantly changing by you buying new cards for it or unlocking special cards throughout the game. So I love this one. I can't recommend this one enough, and I think the expansions are just, I'm having so much fun with it. I've poured about 52 hours into the new stuff, and I've completed the original 2 campaigns, and I am so excited to just play more Etherfields. Amazing game. That's Etherfields, my number 3. My number 2, though, is the campaign game that I'm always wanting to go back to. I've played 5 campaigns of this now. This is Sleeping Gods. Sleeping Gods is a giant adventure game where you are the captain of the Manticore, and you are exploring the Wandering Sea, trying to find the totems of the gods, the sleeping gods. Your goal is to get as many totems as possible and hopefully wake up those gods so you can return home with your entire crew intact. Now, this game features so much incredible stuff, and I've talked about this game so many times on this channel. I'm not going to get into too much detail here, but the items in this game, the action system, the combat, the storytelling, the exploration, the cadence of the entire system, it's amazing. But one thing I actually haven't mentioned in any of my other videos here is the map. This is actually a campaign map that you can write notes on, and I think this is so awesome. It has all of the different numbers for the different encounters, so don't look too much into this if you don't want any spoilers, but I don't think it'll make that much sense to you even if you do look at it too closely. But you can write as many notes as you want on this. You can write your little objectives, you can write where you've been, you can write something that you may have missed in a place that you did see earlier, and these maps can actually last from campaign to campaign, because the campaigns are surprisingly short. They're only going to be 27 turns, and so you have to make sure that you are able to complete a lot in that time. There really is some pressure in here, and it does sneak up on you because this is a game where you can just take a turn after turn after turn. But I love this map system because it's so clearly laid out. It's sectioned by the different pages that you're going to be opening in your book, and you can easily track and take notes in a non-intrusive way. And this is something that is also totally optional. You don't have to use this. If you just want to go off on your adventure, you can also do that. So I love that they have this resource available to you, but it's not something you need to do. If you want to know more about Sleeping Gods, please take a look at my other videos on it. I have an entire 5 reasons why I love Sleeping Gods video, where I talk in depth about the specifics, the nitty-gritty details on why I love this game, and those all still stand. I can't wait for the expansion Distant Skies. I'm excited to see where they take this game, but I have played 5 campaigns of this, and I'm still finding new stuff. This game is honestly always in the back of my head whenever I'm playing any campaign game, because I think to myself, I could be playing Sleeping Gods right now. But amazing game. That's my number 2, Sleeping Gods. Now, my number 1 campaign game, though, the one that actually beats Sleeping Gods, and that is Pandemic Legacy. The reason that I struggle with this quite a bit, because Sleeping Gods is my go-to solo campaign game. I love it so much. I could sit down and play that for hours on end. But Pandemic Legacy Season 1 and Season 0 and Season 2, I think they're all amazing, but I think 1 is the best. I think 0 is second best, and I think that 2 is probably the weakest, but still, they're incredible experiences. These are games that I play with my wife, Ariana, and they're amazing experiences, and I will treasure those experiences so much. And whenever we hear, or I guess in the past tense, whenever we heard that a new Pandemic Legacy was going to come out, we drop everything we're doing and we play it because we are so excited. And I love that it's something that we can do together. If you're unfamiliar with the Pandemic Legacy system, it takes the classic Pandemic game where you are going to be putting cubes onto the board to represent the infection spreading around the world, but it takes it up a notch. Not only are you preventing this disease, but there's also other things happening in the world, and the legacy system has you placing stickers onto the board to actually change the board up. And this entire system here is so smart. It took a game that was already very good, Pandemic, a staple in the cooperative genre, and it has added something that makes it so that every single action you do has a lasting impact. You're balancing constantly the immediate now with the long-term future, and it's so beautifully done here. You have to always be constantly vigilant about the dangers that are present, and as you play, you're going to learn what those dangers can be. You'll learn more and more about the potential hazards. I'm not going to get into any spoilers here because I do recommend that you go get this. You play this game, find another person that you want to play and sit down with this and go on an amazing journey. The other one that I want to talk about here is just the evolution of this system. Pandemic Legacy Season 1 took the original game and added so many interesting things, but you move on to the most recent one, Legacy Season 0 here, and it takes you back into the Cold War. And now, instead of fighting disease cubes, you are fighting the actual agents of Soviet Russia. And so it's up to you to disperse them, and you're sending out these different cars in order to pick them up and get rid of them. It is a brand new take on the game, and not only is the way you're removing stuff changed, but you also have a new system of outbreaks. In the original game, if you had too many diseases in a spot, an outbreak would occur. But in this one here, it's not an infection. It's not just going to behave it's not going to behave like you were expecting it to. Something crazy happens. You're going to reveal a card from your infection deck, and something terrible will happen. I love the tension in this one. Don't worry, that wasn't any spoilers. That's in like the original rulebook when you play the first mission, but I think you need to try both of these. Get Season 1, get Season 0. If you really love it, get Season 2. I think that they're all incredible experiences. Season 2 has some exploration in it. But Season 1 and Season 0 have been some of my most incredible gaming experiences ever. And the fact that I got to share them with the most important person in my life just makes it that much better. So that is my favorite campaign board game. That's Pandemic Legacy, Season 1, Season 0, Season 2. Amazing games. And that's it. Those are my top 10 campaign board games. What do you think of my picks? I'd love to hear what are your favorite campaign board games, and what games do I need to try? What games do you recommend for me as a solo player? What games do you recommend for me and my wife Ariana? I'd love to hear what you think. If you're looking for links to any of the games that I talked about here, please take a look in the description of this video. I hope that you get a chance to play these incredible experiences. Thank you so much for watching SideGame Strong.